So one thing I think is
next to it.
interesting. So I agree with you. That I think that when you're in flow, and like when people play sports and they get in the zone, or they say go to your dark spot, which means that, like, you know, the sports game has started, all of a sudden it's over. It's because you were in the zone. And as performers, it's like the show starts and all of a sudden it's over. It went so fast because you were just in reaction, right?
Yeah.
We pursue that. That's like a very good feeling. You know, it's not something we try to shy away from. We don't like. It's not that we don't like that feeling. But what's weird to me is when that happens, it almost eclipses consciousness and it eclipses our awareness of time.
Yeah.
In a sense, are we pursuing the action of not being alive? Like, are we, because then you're not really reflecting on what you did. You're just kind of always into it, and then all of a sudden your life's going to be over, right? If you're constantly looking for these spots where you forget stuff, are we as improvisers looking to forget?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I also think like intuitive mode would be very clear and very kind of like, even that the time feels that it's slowing down.
Interesting.
So, and nowadays I think I can always remember all the shows that I do. And I think I can recognize the moments when I'm more intuitive and when I'm going off. For example, if there is a sensitive topic that maybe I have a personal touch to it and a fear comes out, maybe that I'll like, I can't control in a way.
Absolutely.
That I might collapse or something like that. Then again, I'm so aware of myself, and my ego again like is there, so I can't be too intuitive. But then again, like if I'm actively processing, like having a conversation in my mind, like there are the microseconds that I can have a conversation in my mind, like let it go, like breathe it out, and then do something that attunes you to your intuitive mode again.
Do you think that's like the goal of improv training, is not to be in that intuitive mode 100% of the time, but a lot of times? Do you think that's what improv training is? Like when you said, what are we doing when we're practicing improv? Is that what you're practicing?
Well, definitely, I would think that I was in this example, I was talking about fear, shame, which is comes from like risk of failure.
Yep.
Failure. How do you say it?
Failure.
Failure.
Yeah.
And all those emotion takes us away from being connected and being playful with other people. So, for example, those are like all the things that are in our subconscious mind too. That are these factors can take us away.
Yeah.
And then most of them improvisers talk about being in their head. So they're like their view shut down. They're not sensitive to our surroundings anymore.
And then they're operating as an individual, right?
Yes.
And they're operating in the conscious mind then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in that way, if I consider that intuitive mode is when I'm more sensitive towards others, then it creates better cooperation.
Is there if you get someone into the flow or in their intuitive mind, are there any people whose intuition or their flow is destructive? Like that their instinct is to harm other people, or their instinct is to be selfish and narcissistic?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that it still needs training. You don't, if somebody says this is my intuition, it doesn't mean it is.
Okay.
Or it doesn't mean that it, maybe it should be differentiated with like optimal intuition. Sure. In that sense that we are we're acknowledging like, again, it comes to empathy, then that we're acknowledging other people's sufferings, and we can work in more empathetic way, that we give room instead of like, I have this my narcissistic need to do this. I call it intuition, so right. I'm just gonna go there and demolish everything and think it at like, no, I succeeded because it was truly coming from me. Right. I don't know, like, so we can differentiate that what is more, when are we also being responsible for progressing, so that we definitely give um, suggestions, we make bold moves, so we are making it better for all of us to working together. But it's a fine balance, obviously. That
so you've really hit on a lot of stuff my thesis talks about when you're talking about risk, empathy, and vulnerability. Those are major themes in my thesis, and it's really poignant to me that this is our first time meeting. And you're studying improv in a completely different country.
Yep.
But we've come to very similar conclusions. Is that improv that does that? Or what is that? Why? How did we come to this very similar conclusions, having never met and been on other sides of the world?
I definitely think it's experimental thing. We need to have experiences that creates us the need to find right words for them, because sometimes, again, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but when you've done something for a long time and then read about it and trying to teach it forward, you go to theory first, but it doesn't resonate because it doesn't, like, everybody's got to have practice, and definitely like the humanly interaction where they experience, for example, what is safety and what is that somebody.
It's a great question, though.
Yeah,
absolutely. Go on. Sorry.
And empathetically, when I am being heard and seen, like, oh, this is how it feels. And yeah, it was funny that when I did I was reading about intuition and read intuition research. Empathy came as a relative term.
Yeah.
And one of the very interesting view to empathy was that empathy is that I'm for a while projecting myself into another person or into another object. And that, for example, and there was an example of Einstein, who there was an empathetic projection that he understood how the atom works.
Interesting.
And to me, that speaks a lot about the intuition as well, that we are able to put ourselves into something unexperienced.
So how do you do that? So I agree with everything you're saying 100%. Yeah. How do you do that without misrepresenting that other culture or that other person? So if you're empathetic and you're putting yourself, so for example, if you're in an improv scene and you put yourself in the role of like a dog character, right? Because the dog's you're not going to misrepresent, or the dog's not going to care. But if you put yourself in the role of, let's say, a person that doesn't have a home, like a homeless person, and you perform what you think is a representation of them, someone might be like, that's not what it's really like.
Yeah.
You know, so, and another thing is, like, when we're talking about kind of the optimal level, also people that have been practicing for over 10 years. When people are new to the form and they've only been practicing for a year, or maybe it's the first class ever, when you tell them to be empathetic, they might, out of a want to be funny, do a misrepresentation of that culture or that person. So how do you be empathetic without harming what you're trying to represent?
Well, definitely, like the always to find somebody who has experienced something and ask, let them speak for them. Yeah. Definitely, like if I would say, like, that's the pure way to reach that kind of information, that it is so whole, like again, holistic, like somebody's living in a culture or being as a representative of something, so that not anybody who would just visit their skin for a while wouldn't get it truly. But also, like, I think empathy in a very, like, also smaller scale, in a way that empathy always like you need to be listening,
Right.
and listening bodily, and definitely, and also like I would add to that the very famous like playing to your best knowledge, also like actually trying to understand the motive behind of a like a certain behavior. So the view that the worldview is in my mind is also like every one of us is trying their best. They're doing their best with the knowledge and with the tools they've got. So definitely, I think it's like optimistic worldview in that sense that we wouldn't see, like we wouldn't show things on a surface level. Like if we are going to something that is very out of our truth, if I would say, then it's more how do you say, like got more the stakes are higher, definitely.
So something that you've said now, and you're saying kind of indirectly, but you also said when we're talking about what is safety, and I think this is good for me to keep in mind as well as everybody else to keep in mind, is it's not like a light switch. It's not like you're not empathetic and you are empathetic. You even just said it, there's gradients of empathy, and there's different ways to approach empathy. Just like safety. It's not like I'm safe and I'm unsafe.
Yeah.
There's different gradients where I feel more safe and less safe, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really good to hold in my mind, in everyone's mind when you're learning improv. It's like we want to be vulnerable, but it's not like you are or you aren't. There's different gradients of vulnerability. I think that's fantastic. So yeah.
Well said.
You said it. I'm just like
no,
I'm just
how you described it now.
I just extrapolated it.
Yeah.
Thank you for this time. Do you have any? Are you part of any improv teams or organizations that you want to shout out? Or
newest theater that we just started up is Melodia Theater.
Okay.
We do improvised musicals, and then there are a couple of different duos that I'm currently working with.
Is there a social media page or anything like that?
Yes, Lahja Improvisation is one duo that we do improvised music, improvised poetry, and improvised scenes, for example. And then I'm part of different projects, and Melodia is
good
as well.
One thing I think we overlook is when we interact with someone in one community, we think we automatically assume they're part of that community when they're parts of many communities. You know, I think that's fantastic. And I think when you're part of a lot of different projects, you get to see different aspects of improv. And I think that's more holistic, to use your term. I think that's true. Is there anyone in your improv career that has been very influential? Like, this person's really changed the way I look at improv, even if it's an author, like maybe you didn't meet them face to face.
Well, I have to mention my dear friend and colleague, Kaisa Kokko-Palmer, who is a person who I admire a lot. And I think she originally introduced me a lot of the improv that I'm already, like, kind of the philosophy also behind it, and appreciation of others.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really affected me was when I started the group, how everybody was allowed to be as they are.
Yeah.
So that was like huge, like, how do you say, life
A milestone?
milestone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Is there anything else
you.
you'd like to say, like during the course of this conversation, where you're like, "Oh, I want to mention this," or is there anything else that came to your head? Or
I probably need to send you the description of intuition later.
That would be awesome.
Translate it into English.
Yes, please do. Please
Yeah.
do. You can send it to me in Finnish, and I'll Google translate it or whatever. I'll figure out how it works.
Let's do that.
Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.